Hey guys, welcome back. It's Missy and we are back at it again with part 2 of the daddy issue series. Hopefully we won't have a wardrobe malfunction. Now if you don't know what I'm talking about, then go ahead and go to our previous video, which I will leave right here, which is understanding daddy issues. But today, men, you're up. We're gonna talk about signs that you have daddy issues. Now, I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little disappointed. I do my research to make sure that I have facts to back up what I think. And there wasn't a lot of information on daddy issues when it comes to men, which is very unfortunate because I feel like men struggle a lot when they don't have a father figure in their life. But don't worry men, I got you. I'm gonna help you out. So as I had mentioned in the previous video, fathers show their sons how to be a man. And when you don't have that, you don't have an example of how to be a man. And also, like I mentioned in my previous video, we can't reason till the age we are 9. So what happens is when something happens, when our dad's not there for us, we then internalize it and think there's something wrong with us. We're not enough. You'll wonder, why did he leave? Why didn't he give me enough affection? What did I do? And so you will naturally blame yourself. Now, what happens often, starting from the time you're young as a boy, you are taught that keep your feelings together, stay strong, feelings are for the weak, don't express your feelings. And you were taught this by either your own father or by other male role models, or even your own mom may say those things to you, or like aunts and family members may say these things to you. So it can come out in a lot of different ways, you not being able to express your feelings. It could come up in you being very angry and expressing a lot of anger and being very aggressive. Or you may get very involved in the streets, or you'll get very involved in illegal activity like drugs or robbery. And also you may be overly sexual, so you may be an F-boy and you may deal with this wound and this discomfort and not deal with your feelings by overly sexualizing women or men, whoever you're interested in, to deal with that wound. It can also come out in you being very aloof and emotionally distant, or it can come out with you being a codependent, a self-sabotager, or a people pleaser, all depending on your attachment style. So with that being said, let's go more in depth about that, and let's talk about the very first sign that you have daddy issues as a male, and that is that you act out, or you acted out as a teen. If as a child you don't have security or safety, or if you don't have someone that's constantly on top of you, making sure that you stay out of trouble and is more of a dominant male role model, then you have a hard time following rules. Not only that, but you're probably hurting really badly because of that lack of that fatherly figure, but you don't know how to address this pain. So you may get into trouble for attention. You may get into drugs to soothe your anxiety and your depression. You may get involved in the streets so you can have a sense of belonging. Or you may be very antisocial because you weren't encouraged to be bold and to make friends. You weren't pushed enough. You may have behavioral problems where when you get angry, you punch things, you punch the wall, maybe you throw things. Like I said, you don't know how to address the pain, so the way you address the pain is by acting out. The next thing is that you are insecure in your masculinity. So because your dads teach you how to be a man, if you don't have that, or if you have an overly aggressive father, or you have an overly passive father, then you won't learn entirely how to feel comfortable in your masculinity. So this can cause you to feel like you always have to be the alpha dog, where you always are acting off of ego and you have to be the top dog in the room. Or it can cause you to be very homophobic, where you're very uncomfortable in your sexuality. You may not like confident women because they will challenge that alpha status and you don't want to be challenged. You may avoid your feelings because being secure in your masculinity means deal with your feelings, and if you're insecure about it, feelings may be seen as weak, like you were taught. And this can also cause you to invalidate other people's feelings because you're uncomfortable with your own. This can cause you to be very emotionally unavailable and have a very hard time opening up. So when people try to get close to you, you may avoid getting close. Or you have a really hard time being able to have conflicts with others, or confrontations rather with others, and being able to address issues, especially if they're emotional. The next thing is that you may have a fear of commitment, especially if you had a dad that had walked out on you, because you don't have a clear example of what it's like to stick around. That's what's familiar to you, is that you're supposed to leave when things get uncomfortable. So this especially happens when you saw your dad walk out on your mom. Or you learn that you can't really trust anyone, so why really commit to anyone if you can't trust anyone? You may be, like I said, very avoidant of things, so you don't want to entirely commit to things because that's a huge responsibility and you weren't taught responsibility. And this could really affect your work ethic. This is because men naturally push their kids to work harder. And if you didn't have a dad that pushed you to work harder, then you don't know really the responsibility or seeing a positive work ethic. So this can also cause you to not put a lot of work into your relationships. And also you probably always expect your relationships to fail. So when you expect them to fail, you don't put much of an effort into them, so you don't even bother committing. You're always looking for ways that it will go wrong, so that way you can protect yourself because of that lack of trust and because you are very afraid to commit to something and maybe potentially getting hurt. And so that can cause you to fear marriage or fear having kids, because that's a huge commitment. So kids and marriage may freak you out. The next sign is that you may be competitive or an overachiever. Whenever I hear this, I think of like that football kid, like that kid that their dad's forcing them to do football. And in High School Musical, he didn't do football, but in High School Musical, he's like, no, dad, it's not my dream, it's yours. Maybe that's not High School Musical. I don't know, but you know what I'm talking about. Anyway, if you had a dad that was non-existent, or you had a dad that overly pushed you, or you had a dad that didn't pay much attention to you, you may try to overly push yourself or be an overachiever just so that you can get the approval of your dad or get his attention. This is because you never felt enough and you always felt worthless. And the only way that you felt like you could gain his approval is by being an overachiever. So this is how your ego deals with that worthlessness, by working really hard, and then when you fail, you take it really hard. You're really hard on yourself. You're really negative towards yourself. You were just trying to get your dad to notice you and your achievements so he'll be proud, and you finally can feel like you're enough. Oh my God, that sounds really sad. All of these are breaking my heart. Even though you can understand this on a logical level now, it still will affect you emotionally. So that's why it's important to be aware. The next one is that you are too serious. This is because dads are known to be more of the playful ones, and when you don't have a dad that's more playful, then you're not able to get in touch with that side, so then you lose on that experience. Not only that, but if your dad walked out on you or he doesn't do his part, you may have felt like you needed to now be the man of the house, especially if you're the oldest. So you may have had to grow up fast. You may were parentified, where you felt like you had to be the other parent, you had to be the other adult. You may have had to take care of your siblings or took care of your mom. So there's no real time to play if you're a parent at a young age. Not only that, but you may have been the butt of the joke where, you know, it's always a joke. Oh, Jimmy doesn't have a dad, you know, you're always the butt of the joke. So because of that, in order to protect yourself, you just became very serious. Maybe you'd be very aggressive towards others when they tried to make that joke because it's very painful, but you didn't want them to see that pain. So you may snap easily, and you're more likely to react with anger because you do take things very seriously, and you're probably a lot more hard on yourself because you are more serious. You don't know how to really poke fun at yourself. The next one is disrespectful. So if you don't have someone that enforces the rules or lays down the line, then naturally you're going to be disrespectful, especially if you had a very submissive or passive mother. You may have felt like you had to overcome the lack of a father figure, or maybe you're very angry about not having a father figure, so you take it out on other men especially, or other men that try to be dominant, or other fatherly-like type figures. So you may notice you have a hard time getting along with certain personality types that remind you of your dad or remind you of more of a fatherly type figure. You may get very jealous of others that have that fatherly type figure. And you can especially be more disrespectful if you have an overly aggressive dad that's very disrespectful to you. You either will be disrespectful to him or you'll be disrespectful to people that you can pick on. The next one is you may be more passive and more fearful. And this especially happens, like I've said, with the two extremes. If you have an overly aggressive dad, you may have had to back down to deal with his over aggressiveness. Or if you had a very passive father, you may have taken on those traits and now you are overly passive. So confrontation can be very hard for you. It can be very scary. You may notice you'll back down. Also, you may notice you attract more aggressive or more dominant women to counteract with the fact that you didn't have a very aggressive father, or because your mom was very aggressive and your dad, because your dad was more of the passive one, you kind of took on that role. Or if you are someone where you had an overly aggressive dad, then you may be very terrified of confrontation because of that abuse. So you naturally will be kind of more of a doormat, and you may be more on the codependent side where you're a people pleaser and you're looking for people's validation because of how little validation you got from your dad. And the only way you felt good is when you pleased your dad or when you took care of your dad in some sort of way. The next one is fear of abandonment, which always happens when you have mommy or daddy issues. And that does come from your attachment style. If you had more of an insecure attachment style, which if you're interested, I'll leave right here. But naturally, not all the time, but men are more prone to having an avoidant attachment style. So it's harder for them to connect with other people, and the way that they deal with that fear of abandonment is by disconnecting from others and not seeing that they really need others, not really asking for help. It could happen that you're an anxious attachment or anxious avoidant attachment where you feel like you really need others and you hold on to them so tightly. It very much depends on how your father treated you as a child. But all in all, when you have this fear of abandonment, you're always trying to protect yourself. You don't trust anyone, so you always make moves of trying to avoid connecting with people or allowing people in, so that way you can protect yourself and get them before they get you. And then the last one is that you will look for a father figure. So you may look for someone that you can look up to. Maybe your uncle will take that role. Maybe someone in the streets will take that role. Maybe a cousin will take that role, a brother, whatever it is. You're always looking for someone that will take that role of that father figure to guide you, because you do need an example of how do I be a man? And that is one way you fill that void. And you can also do that if you don't like your father, whether he's too passive, he's too aggressive, whatever it is. You may look for someone else that you can depend on, that can show you a better example. So that is the signs that you have daddy issues as a male. What do you guys think? Leave it all in the comments below, and please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share with someone that you think may need it. Until next time, thanks for watching. Bye guys. What am I trying to say? My camera cut out.